this chapter, we will dive deep into kingdom planting. You might remember from our previous study on Robert Whittaker's five kingdom system that life is broadly divided into Monera, Protista, fungi, animalia, and planting. Today, we focus solely on the plants. But before we look at the plants themselves, we need to understand how our definition of a plant has changed over time. In the past, anything with a cell wall was put into the plant kingdom. This included bacteria, fungi, and even some protists. However, science has evolved. We have now excluded fungi and members of Monera and Protista from this kingdom. For example, you might have heard of cyanobacteria, often called blue-green algae. Despite the name, they are not true algae anymore. They belong to kingdom Monera. In modern biology, when we talk about the plant kingdom, we are strictly referring to five specific groups. 1. Algae, 2. Bryophytes, 3. Pteridophytes, 4. Gymnosperms, 5. Angiosperms. Angiosperms are our flowering plants. When we see some plant, how do we decide which plant goes to which group? If you see history, we have used three main systems of classification. Let us break them down. First is the artificial system. The earliest scientists, like Linnaeus, used artificial systems. They looked only at superficial traits, things you can see at a glance, like the color and shape of leaves or the structure of the male reproductive parts. The flaw in this system is this system was too simple. It often separated closely related species just because they looked different on the outside. It also gave vegetative traits the same importance as sexual traits, which is a mistake because a plant's physical look can change easily depending on its environment. Second is the natural system, famously used by George Bentham and Joseph Dalton Hooker. It did not just look at the outside, it looked at internal features too, like anatomy, embryology, and the plant's chemistry. This gave a much more accurate picture of how plants are related. Third is the phylogenetic system. Today, we use the phylogenetic system. This is based on evolutionary relationships. It assumes that plants in the same group share a common ancestor. This is the gold standard for modern biology. Now, the question is how these evolutionary relationships are established. They are established usually by physical evidence or evidence from fossils. Sometimes the physical evidence or fossils are not enough to settle a debate. In those cases, taxonomists use three high-tech methods. First is numerical taxonomy. For this, computers are used to look at hundreds of observable characteristics at once. Each trait is given a code or a number, allowing us to process massive amounts of data equally. Second is cytotaxonomy. This focuses on the cells. We look at the number, structure, and behavior of chromosomes. Third is chemotaxonomy. Finally, we use chemistry. By analyzing the chemical constituents, the unique ingredients inside the plant, we can resolve confusion about where a plant belongs. The plant kingdom has become more exclusive over time. moving away from simple looks and towards a deep understanding of internal structures, DNA, and evolutionary history. Now, let us know about algae. This is the first group. Think of green slime in a pond. It is algae. Algae are chlorophyll bearing organisms. They are simple thalloid, meaning they don't have true roots or leaves and mostly live in water, both fresh and salt water. But they are not just in the water. You will find them on the moist stones, soil, and even wood. Some even live in partnership with fungi to form lichens, and others even grow on the fur of sloth bears. The look of algae varies wildly. Some are colonial, like volvox, looking like tiny rolling balls. Others are filamentous, looking like long threads. Think of Eulothrix or Spirogyra when we say filamentous. And then you have the giants of the sea called kelps. These marine forms can create massive underwater structures that look like forests. How do they multiply? That is, how do algae multiply? Algae use three different methods. One is vegetative. This is simply fragmentation. A piece breaks off and that piece grows into a whole new plant body. Second is by asexual. They produce zoospores. These are little spores with tails, that is flagella, that allow them to swim. When they land, they germinate into new plants. Third is bisexual. This is where it gets interesting. It involves the fusion of two gametes, and there are three ways this happens. One way is isogamous. The two gametes look identical here. They can both be swimmers, like in Eulothrix, or both be non swimmers or non movers, like in Spirogyra. Anisogamous is the second type. Here, the two gametes are different sizes. Oogamous is the third type. This is like the human model. One large non-moving female gamete and a smaller motile male gametes are there. You see this in volvox and fucus. Why algae are important to humans? You might not realize it, but algae are the unsung heroes of our planet. They are oxygen producers. At least half of the world's carbon dioxide fixation is done by algae through photosynthesis. They are the primary reason aquatic animals have dissolved oxygen to breathe. They form part of food chain. They are the primary producers that form the very base of the food cycle for all aquatic life. We humans also eat them. Species like Porphyra, Laminaria, and Sargassum are among 70 marine species used as food. Even space travelers use a protein-rich algae called chlorella as a food supplement. They are also used as commercial products. We get hydrocolloids, that is, water-holding substances from them, like algin from brown algae and coragen from red algae. And don't forget agar. It is used to grow microbes in labs and it also gives ice cream and jellies their texture. As we move forward, we divide algae into three main groups based on their color and chemistry. First is Chlorphyceae. This is the green algae. Second is Phaeophyceae. This is the brown algae. Third is Rhodophyceae. This is the red algae. Let us start with chlorophyceae. You can simply call them the green algae. Think of the greenest grass you've ever seen. That grass green color is exactly what defines these algae. This is because they have two specific pigments, chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B. They are neatly packed into specialized structures called chloroplasts. One of the coolest things about green algae is their variety. They don't all look the same. Some are unicellular, that is just a single cell. Some live in colonies like a little floating neighborhood, and others are filamentous, looking like long green threads. Even their chloroplasts come in different artistic shapes. Depending on the species, a chloroplast might look like a disc, a plate, a cup, a spiral, or even a ribbon. Now let us look at how they live and protect themselves. Let us see how they store food. Most green algae have storage bodies called pyrenoids located right inside the chloroplasts. Think of a pyrenoid as a specialized pantry. It contains protein in the center, surrounded by a layer of starch. In some cases, they might even store food as a tiny oil droplets. To stay sturdy, they have a rigid two-layered cell wall. The inner layer is made of cellulose, just like higher plants. The outer layer is made of pectose. You can remember this as a CP sandwich. Cellulose inside, pectose outside. How do they multiply? One, by vegetative. Simple fragmentation. A piece breaks and a new body grows. Second, by asexual. They produce flagellated zoospores. These are swimmer spores created in a special nursery called the zoosporangia. Third is by sexual. This shows the most variety. They can be isogamous, anisogamous, or oogamous. Let us memorize the famous five of the green algae. Try to visualize them as I name them. Chlamydomonas, it is a single cell swimmer. Volvox, the rolling colony. Eulothrix and Spirogyra, the long filaments. Chara, the more complex stony looking one. Remember, green color, chlorophyll A and B, and a double layered wall of cellulose and pectose, that is your chlorophyceae. Second type is Phaeophyceae. Let us see about Phaeophyceae, which is called brown algae. If the green algae were the grass of the water, then brown algae are the forests of the ocean. Unlike the green algae, these are almost exclusively marine. They are the overachievers of the sea when it comes to size, means they are incredibly efficient, adaptable, and productive organisms that excel in challenging environments. On one side, you have simple branched threads like ectocarpus, and other side you have the kelps. Kelps are massive, which can reach heights of 100 meters. Imagine a plant underwater as tall as 30-story building. That is the scale we are dealing with. Why are they brown? It is all about the chemistry. They possess chlorophyll A and C along with the carotenoids and xanthophylls. But the real star here is a specific pigment called fucoxanthin. The more fucoxanthin a plant has, the browner it looks. Their color can range from a light olive green to a deep dark brown. How they store food? When these plants make food, they don't store it as a simple starch. They store it as a complex carbohydrates called laminarin or mannitol. Laminarin for long-term storage. Mannitol available as immediate source help in osmoregulation and acts as antioxidant. Basically, they help to survive in harsh conditions. Think of these as the high energy batteries of the brown algae world. Since these plants often live in rough ocean currents, they need a sturdy build. Their body is divided into three very distinct parts. One is the hold fast. This is like a anchor. It is what keeps the plant attached to the rocky seafloor, that is the substratum. Second is the stipe. This is the stalk or the trunk. Third is the frond. This is the leaf-like organ. This is where the photosynthesis happens. Their cell walls are made of cellulose, but they are covered on the outside by a slimy gelatinous coating called algin. This slime protects them from drying out and helps them withstand the crashing waves. Let us talk about how they reproduce. One is by vegetative. Again, here the fragmentation is seen. Second is by asexual. This is a key detail for your exams. Most brown algae produce zoospores that are pear-shaped or pyriform shaped. Most importantly, they have two unequal flagella attached to their sides, that is lateral attachment. Third is bisexual. They can be isogamous, anisogamous, or oogamous. Just like the spores, their gametes are also pear-shaped with two side-attached flagella. The union of these gametes usually happens in the open water or inside a specialized egg room called the oogonium. Let us remember five names. If you hear these, think brown algae. 1. Ectocarpus. It is a simple thread. 2. Dictyota. 3. Laminaria. 4. Sargassum. 5. Fucus. Keep that mental image of a giant kelp forest anchored by a holdfast. Next, third one is a rhodophyceae. Now we come to rhodophyceae, commonly known as the red algae. Their beautiful red color is not just for show. It comes from a dominant pigment called R-phycoerythrin. This pigment is the secret to their survival, allowing them to capture the very faint blue light that reaches deep into the ocean. Most red algae are marine and they particularly love warmer waters. But here is what makes them truly special. They have a incredible vertical range. You can find them right at the surface where there is plenty of light. You can also find them at great depths in the ocean, deeper than almost any other photosynthetic organism, where very little light ever penetrates. Structurally, most red algae are multicellular. While some are simple, others have quite complex body organizations that look almost like delicate underwater lace. Let us talk about food storage. This is a favorite topic for exams. Red algae store their energy as fluoridin starch. Now, here is the brain hook to help you remember its structure. Fluoridin starch is very similar to amylopectin and glycogen. We humans store energy as glycogen in our livers and muscles. So, you can think of red algae as having a storage style that is surprisingly similar to animals. This is where red algae really stand out from the green and brown classes. That is, they reproduce by vegetative. Like the others, they use fragmentation, then asexual and sexual method. Here is the big difference. Red algae do not move. Both their asexual spores and their sexual gametes are non-motile. They do not have tails or flagella to swim. They rely entirely on the water currents to move them around. Their sexual reproduction is always oogamous, that is, a large stationary egg and a smaller male gamete. And unlike the simpler algae, their life cycle involves complex post fertilization developments. It is a sophisticated process for such an ancient group. Let us memorize these four common members of the red algae family. One is Polysiphonia, two Porphyra, which is often used as a food, three Gracilaria, four Gelidium. Remember, Gracilaria and Gelidium are the ones we mentioned earlier that gives us agar. If it makes jelly, it's likely red algae. Next, we move from the water to the land as we begin our study of the bryophytes. Bryophytes include the mosses and the liverworts. You often see them in moist, shaded mountain areas. We call them the amphibians of the plant kingdom. Why? Because just like a frog, they can live on soil, but they are absolutely dependent on water for sexual reproduction. Without a thin film of water, their male cells simply cannot swim to reach the female. This is why you will always find them in damp, humid, and shady spots. If you look at a bryophyte, you will notice they are more advanced than algae, but they still are not full land plants. They are thallus like. They can be flat, prostrate, or stand up, that is, erect. They lack true roots, stems, or leaves. Instead, they have root like or leaf like structures. To stay attached to the ground, they use tiny hair like structures called rhizoids. These can be single cell or a group of cells acting as a simple anchor. Let us see the life cycle. This is a crucial point for your exam, so listen closely. In higher plants like trees, the main plant is a sporophyte. But in bryophytes, the main plant body is gametophyte and it is haploid and it produces gametes. Gametophyte have multicellular sex organs. The male, also called antheridium, it produces antherozoids which have two tails, that is biflagellate for swimming. The female is also called archegonium. This is flask shaped and produce a single egg. The male swimmers are released into the water and travel to the flask shaped female organ. Where is this female organ? It is on gametophyte. They fuse with the egg to create a zygote. The zygote grows into a multicellular body called a sporophyte. This sporophyte is not independent. It lives like a guest on the green gametophyte, sucking up nourishment to survive. Eventually, some cells in the sporophyte undergo meiosis to create spores, which fly off and grow back into new green gametophytes. Let us see ecological and economic importance of bryophytes. You might think these tiny plants don't do much, but they are ecological powerhouses. Along with lichens, mosses are the very first to colonize bare rocks. They slowly decompose the rock, turning it into soil so higher plants can eventually grow. Mosses grow in dense, thick mats. This acts like a carpet that reduces the impact of falling rain, preventing the soil from being washed away, that is, soil erosion. A specific moss called sphagnum provides peat. People have used dried peat as fuel for centuries because sphagnum is amazing at holding water. It is used as packaging material for shipping living plants across long distances. It keeps them moist and alive. In summary, bryophytes are the bridge between water and land. Remember, their root-like rhizoids, their guest sporophyte, and their role as the carpet of the forest. Now, we divide this group into two main classes, liverworts and mosses. Let us talk about liverworts. You will find liverworts growing in the quietest, dampest corners of the nature, that is, on the muddy banks of streams, in marshy ground, on damp soil, or even clinging to the bark of trees deep in the woods. Essentially, if it is moist and shady, you will likely to find a liverwort there. How do you recognize them? Their body is mostly thalloid, the most famous example being Marchantia. Imagine a flat, green ribbon that is dorsiventral, meaning it has a distinct top and bottom, and it is pressed closely against the ground, that is, the substrate. However, some members are leafy. These have tiny leaf-like appendages arranged in two neat rows on a stem-like structure. It is a very simple, organized design. Asexual reproduction in liverworts include two methods. One is by fragmentation, that is, a piece of the body simply breaks off and grows into a new plant. Two is gemme. This is their unique party trick. They develop specialized structures called gemme. These are small green multicellular buds. These buds sit in tiny bowl-shaped containers on the plant surface called gemma cups. Think of them like a tiny cups of green beads. When raindrops hit the cup, the beads or gemme get splashed out, landing on the soil and grow into brand new individuals. When it comes to sexual reproduction, liverworts produce male and female organs. These can be on the same plant or on separate male and female plants. After fertilization, we get the sporophyte. Remember, this is the guest living on the main green plant. In liverworts, the sporophyte has a very specific three-part anatomy, that is, the foot, which anchors it to the parent. Second is the seta, the little stalk or neck. Third is the capsule, the head where the action happens. Inside that capsule, a process called meiosis takes place to produce spores. When the capsule matures and opens, these spores are released and they germinate to form new free living green gametophytes. Next, we will talk about mosses. Now, we move from the flat liverworts to the more familiar velvety green mats we see on the forest floors, the mosses. Unlike many other plants, the main thing you see when you look at moss is the gametophyte. But in mosses, the life stage is actually a two-act play. It happens in two distinct phases. Stage 1 is the protonema stage. This is the infant stage. It grows directly from a spore. It looks like a creeping green branched thread, almost like a tiny web on the soil. Stage 2, it is the leafy stage. This is the adult stage. It grows from the protonema as a side bud. This is the part we usually recognize, upright, slender stems with leaves arranged in a beautiful spiral. To stay anchored, they use multicellular branched rhizoids. Remember, this leafy stage is where the sex organs live. Mosses are incredibly resilient when it comes to reproduction. The vegetative way. They can multiply through fragmentation or by budding on that secondary protonema stage we just mentioned. This allows them to spread quickly across a damp rock or a log. The sexual way. The male organs, that is antheridia, and female organs, that is archegonia, are produced right at the very tips or the apex of those leafy shoots. Once fertilization happens, a zygote is formed and it grows into the next generation, the sporophyte. Now let us talk about the sporophyte. If you recall, the liverwort sporophyte was quite simple, but in mosses, it is much more elaborate. It still has the three-part anatomy. First is the food, which is the anchor. Second is the seta, which is the long, elegant stalk. Third is the capsule, which is the storage tank at the top. Inside this capsule, meiosis occurs to create spores. But mosses don't just drop their spores. They have an elaborate mechanism of spore dispersal. They wait for the perfect conditions to ensure their seeds travel as far as possible to find a new home. Before we finish, let's get three names into our long term memory. If you hear these, think moss. One is Funaria. This is the classic rope like moss. Two is Polytrichum. It is often called haircap moss. Third is Sphagnum, the peat moss we discussed earlier that is used for fuel and shipping the plants. Next, we are stepping into massive turning point in plant history. We are talking about the pteridophytes, which include the ferns and horsetails. Why are they a revolution? Because evolutionarily they are the first land plants to possess vascular tissues, xylem and phloem. Think of these as the pipes of the plant world. These pipes allow them to transport water and food efficiently, which means they can grow much larger and sturdier than the mosses we studied earlier. You will usually find these plants in cool, damp, and shady places, though some are tough enough to flourish in sandy soil. Here is a key concept for your exams. Recall that in bryophytes, the main green plant was the gametophyte. In pteridophytes, the main plant body is a sporophyte. This is a huge deal because this sporophyte is differentiated into true roots, true stems, and true leaves. There are small leaves called microphyls. They are found in plants like Selaginella. There are large leaves called macrophyls, the classic big fronds you see on ferns. Now let us talk about how they reproduce. It is a bit of double life. First is the spore phase. The sporophyte has leaf-like structures called sporophylls. These protect the spore-making factories called sporangia. In some plants, like Equisetum, these leaves huddle together to form a cone or a strobili. Inside those factories, cells undergo meiosis to produce spores. Next stage is when those spores land, it grows into tiny heart-shaped green plant called a prothallus. It is small, but it is independent and photosynthetic. It is a gametophyte. Third stage, even though pteridophytes have pipes to grow tall, they are still trapped by water. The prothallus needs a cool, damp spot and it must have water for the male gametes, antherozoids, to swim to the female organ, archegonium. Because they are so dependent on water for this one swim, you won't find ferns everywhere. They are restricted to specific damp geographical regions. Most pteridophytes produce only one kind of spore, that is, homosporous. But some, like Selaginella and Salvinia, produce two types of spores, macrospores and microspores. We call these plants as heterosporous. In these plants, the female gametophyte actually stays attached to the parent plant. The zygote develops into an embryo inside the female gametophyte. This is the precursor to the seed habit. It's nature's first experiment with protecting the next generation inside a package, and it is a vital step in evolution. To finish, let us look at the four classes of pteridophytes. Try to memorize one example for each. First is Coelopsida, example Coelotum. Second is Lycopsida, example Selaginella and Lycopodium. Third is Sphenopsida, example Equisetum. Fourth is Pteropsida, example Dryopteris, Pteris, and Adiantum. Why do we care about them? They are used for medicinal purposes. They act as soil binders, holding the earth together with their roots. They are very popular as ornamental plants because of their beautiful feathery leaves. Next, we look at the gymnosperms. To understand them, we just need to look at their name. In Greek, gymnos means naked and sperma means seeds. Unlike the fruits you eat, where the seed is hidden inside, gymnosperms have seeds that are not covered by an ovary wall. They are exposed to the world before and after fertilization. Gymnosperms are not just little weeds, they include some of the most massive living things on earth. The giant redwood sequoia is one of the tallest tree species in existence. Most of gymnosperms have taproots, but they are famous for their partnerships. Example, in Pinus, the roots team up with fungi to form mycorrhiza. In Cycas, they have specialized coralloid roots that work with nitrogen fixing bacteria. These plants are built for tough neighborhoods. Their leaves are masters at handling extreme heat, wind, and dryness. In conifers, the leaves are needle-like to reduce surface area. They also have a thick cuticle and sunken stomata. Basically, they hold their breath to prevent water loss. Now let's look at how they reproduce. Gymnosperms are heterosporous, meaning they produce two types of spores. Tiny ones are micro and large ones are mega. These spores are produced in strobili, which you probably know as cones. If you see the male cone, these have microsporophylls. Inside they produce the pollen grain. Pollen grain is a highly reduced male traveler that carries the genetic material. If you see the female cone, these have megasporophylls with ovules. Important distinction to remember is in Pinus, both male and female cones live on the same tree. But in Cycas, the male cones and female cones live on entirely different trees. Here is the biggest shift in evolution. Do you remember how mosses and ferns had a free living stage? Here, free living stage is not present. In gymnosperms, the male and female gametophytes do not have an independent existence. They stay inside the house, means they are retained within the sporangia on the main plant body. Since these plants are often tall, they use the wind. Pollen grains are released into air currents and carried to the opening of the ovules. Once they land, they grow a pollen tube. This tube acts like a private tunnel growing towards the female organ. Why they are growing? To deliver the male gametes. Following fertilization, the zygote becomes an embryo and the ovule becomes a seed. And remember, seeds in gymnosperms are still naked. Now let us talk about angiosperms in brief. Well, angiosperms are opposite. These are the flowering plants. Here, nature has decided to wrap everything. The pollen grains and ovules are not exposed to outside. They develop inside highly specialized structures we call flowers. And most importantly, those seeds are not naked. They are safely enclosed inside fruits. Angiosperms are the most successful and diverse group of plants on earth. You can find them almost everywhere, and their size range is absolutely mind blowing. On one end, we have Wolffia. It is so small, you would need a keen eye just to spot it. On the other hand, we have the eucalyptus trees, which can tower over 100 meters into the sky. Between the tiny speck and the massive tree lies almost every flower, vegetable, and hardwood tree you see in your daily life. It is not an exaggeration to say we could not survive without angiosperms. They are the backbone of human civilization because they provide us with food and fodder. Almost every grain, fruit, and vegetable we eat comes from this group. Fuel and medicine. Many of our traditional and modern medicines are derived from flowering plants. And for commerce, from timber to textiles, they provide the raw materials for a huge part of our global economy. To keep track of this massive group, botanists divide angiosperms into two main classes based on their seeds and structures. One is monocotyledons. These have seeds with just one embryonic leaf. Think of things like grass, corn, or lilies. Second is dicotyledon. These have two cotyledons in their seeds, that is, two embryonic leaves in their seeds. This group includes most of our big trees, beans, and many garden flowers. That brings us to the end of our plant kingdom. Let's do a quick recap. Algae are aquatic and simple. Bryophytes are the amphibians. They move to land but still need water for gametes. Pteridophytes, they are first vascular plants with xylem and phloem. Gymnosperms, they produce naked seeds. Angiosperms, they are flowering masters of the planet.